My father raised his glass and made a toast to the daughter who gave me real grandkids. The room burst into applause for my sister. Beside me, my son, the boy I had raised alone after my husband died, leaned closer and whispered, "What about me?" I didn't stand. I didn't argue. I simply lifted my glass and said one sentence that made my father cough so violently the entire room went silent. "My name is Rachel, and you need to understand something." That night was supposed to be a celebration. It was my father's 70th birthday. The whole family had gathered, my sister Emma and her husband with their 3 children, my uncles and aunts, cousins I hadn't seen in years. And me, seated at a corner table with my 11-year-old son, Jason. My husband died when Jason was 2. A brain aneurysm. He kissed me goodbye on a Tuesday morning, and by noon he was gone. For the past 9 years, I've done everything on my own, worked double shifts as a nurse, helped with homework at midnight, showed up as both mother and father at every soccer game and every school play. Every moment that mattered, I was there. Jason is the best thing that ever happened to me, even on the days when exhaustion makes it hard to stand. You also need to know this about my father: he's traditional, rigid in his beliefs about what makes a proper family. In his mind, legacies are built on lasting marriages, obedient children, and grandchildren raised the right way, under one roof, with 2 parents, carrying the family name forward. When my husband died, Dad suggested I move back home. A woman alone, he said, shouldn't be raising a boy by herself. I refused. Instead of going back, I built a life. My sister Emma did everything the way Dad approves of. She married her college sweetheart, had 3 children before turning 30, and lives in a beautiful suburban home. Her husband, Tyler, works in finance. Their kids attend private school. I love my sister, truly. But in Dad's eyes, she has always been the golden child, and he has never tried to hide it. So there we were at the elegant restaurant he had rented for the party. Everyone dressed up, champagne flowing, speeches echoing across the room. Jason sat proudly beside me in the button-up shirt I had ironed before my hospital shift that morning. He had been so excited, even made Grandpa a birthday card by hand. Then Dad stood to speak. He thanked everyone for coming, reminisced about his life and achievements, and spoke about how proud he was of the family he had built. Finally, he lifted his glass and said, "I want to make a special toast to Emma, the daughter who gave me real grandkids. The ones who carry on our family name properly, who were raised in a real home with 2 parents who planned for them. Real grandkids." Applause filled the room. Smiles turned toward Emma and her picture-perfect family, while my son sat quietly at my side. My sister looked uncomfortable, I'll give her that. But she still smiled and raised her glass while her children beamed beside her. Next to me, Jason went very still. It was the kind of stillness that only happens when a child is trying with all his strength not to cry. He looked up at me with wide, wounded eyes and whispered, "What about me, Mom? Am I not real?" For years, I had swallowed comments like that, smoothing them over with polite smiles. For a second, I almost did it again. Do you think I should have stayed quiet? I had done it so many times before. But my hand trembled as I picked up my champagne glass, and even though my fingers shook, my voice did not. I didn't stand. I didn't shout. I waited. I waited until the applause faded, until my father lifted his drink to his lips, until at least the people at our end of the table were paying attention. Then I raised my glass and said clearly, "And here's to the grandfather who taught me that when your spouse dies and leaves you alone with a 9-month-old baby, you're no longer part of the real family." My father erupted into a violent coughing fit. He doubled over, champagne spilling across the table. The room didn't just fall quiet, it froze. Glasses hovered halfway to mouths, forks suspended above plates. My Aunt Linda, Dad's sister, the one I've always been close to, actually gasped. And what did I do then? Did I apologize? Did I run? No. I sat there calmly and took a sip of my champagne while my father's face turned crimson and his wife patted his back in panic. Jason stared at me with a mixture of shock and something else, maybe pride, maybe relief that someone had finally said what he'd been feeling. The next few minutes changed everything. But you need to understand something first. This wasn't about one toast. This was about 9 years of subtle reminders that my son was somehow less because he only had one parent. 9 years of birthday parties where Dad made a grand show of spoiling Emma's children while handing Jason a generic gift card. 9 years of family photos with Emma's family placed front and center while Jason and I stood at the edge. Soon, I'll tell you exactly what my father said once he stopped coughing. I'll tell you about the argument that followed, about what Emma said, and about the choice I made that night, a choice I wasn't sure I could undo. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your child? Because that was the choice in front of me in that silent, frozen restaurant, with everyone staring at me as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. My father finally caught his breath. He set his glass down hard on the table. The look he gave me was painfully familiar, disappointment laced with anger. It was the same look he'd given me when I told him I was pregnant at 23, before I had finished nursing school. The same look he'd given me when I refused to move back home after my husband died. "Rachel," he said, his voice tight with anger, that was completely uncalled for. That was when my Aunt Linda stood up. "Actually, Tom," she said firmly, "I think it was long overdue." The tension in the room was unbearable. My father's face shifted from red to purple. Emma stared down at her plate, unable to look at anyone. Her husband, Tyler, looked like he wanted to vanish. Under the table, Jason grabbed my hand and squeezed it tightly. "Linda, stay out of this," my father snapped. "No," she said calmly, then turned to me. "Rachel, I'm sorry. I should have said something years ago. You need to understand something about Aunt Linda. She's Dad's older sister, and she's one of the only people he has ever truly listened to. She lost her husband decades ago and raised her 2 children alone. Back then, Dad supported her. Which made his treatment of me and Jason even harder to understand." Dad stood up, glaring at me. "Rachel, you're embarrassing yourself." "And Jason?" I replied quietly. "You embarrassed him. I'm just making sure he knows I see it." Emma finally spoke, her voice hesitant. "Dad, she's right. That toast was..." "Don't you start," Dad cut her off sharply. By now, the entire party was watching. Uncle Mike had his phone out, as if he might record the moment. My cousins whispered among themselves. Emma's children looked confused, sensing something was wrong. But Jason sat up straighter beside me, still holding my hand. "I think we should go," I said as I stood. "Come on, Jason." "Rachel, wait," Emma said, rising to her feet. "Don't leave like this." "Why not?" I asked. "We're not the real family anyway, right?" My father slammed his hand on the table. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I asked, turning fully toward him. The room was completely silent. "Explain it to your grandson. Tell Jason how he's not real enough for you." Jason's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. He just stood there, looking at his grandfather, waiting. And my father couldn't even meet his gaze. That was the moment I knew I was done. Done trying to earn approval that would never come. Done watching my son slowly realize he wasn't loved the same way his cousins were. Aunt Linda walked over and put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'll walk you out," she said. As we headed toward the door, I heard Emma arguing with Dad. I heard Tyler trying to calm everyone down. I heard my father talking about respect and gratitude. But I didn't stop. I took Jason's hand, and we walked out of that restaurant together. In the parking lot, Aunt Linda hugged both of us. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "That boy is every bit as real and twice as loved as any other grandchild." That was when Jason finally broke down. He cried in the parking lot while I held him close. "Am I really not good enough for Grandpa?" he asked. His words shattered my heart. What would you have said to your child in that moment? I told him the truth. You are more than good enough. Grandpa is the one who isn't good enough for you. Aunt Linda nodded. Your mom is right, sweetheart. We drove home in silence. Jason fell asleep in the car on the way home, completely drained from the emotional storm of the night. After I carried him inside and settled him into bed, I went back out and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. I kept replaying everything in my mind. Had I made things worse? Had I permanently damaged his relationship with his grandfather? My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from Emma. Messages from cousins. Even one from Uncle Mike that simply said, "That was epic." But there was nothing from Dad. 3 days went by. I went back to work. Jason went to school. We didn't talk about the party, but I could see the weight of it hanging over him. He was quieter than usual. On Wednesday, he didn't want to video chat with Emma's kids like he normally did. That told me more than words ever could. Then on Thursday night, someone knocked on the door. It was Emma, and she looked furious. We need to talk, she said as soon as I opened it. What do you think she was angry about? That I had embarrassed her? That I had ruined Dad's birthday? No. She was angry at herself. I should have said something years ago, she admitted, sitting at my kitchen table. I've seen the way Dad treats Jason differently. I let it happen because it was easier. Because it meant my kids got more attention. I didn't want to rock the boat. She looked ashamed. Tyler and I talked, she continued. We're not going to Sunday dinners at Dad's anymore unless he apologizes to you and Jason. The kids asked why you left the party, and we told them the truth. They were horrified. Emma, you don't have to do that, I said. Yes, I do, she replied firmly. You're my sister. Jason is my nephew. What Dad did was cruel. I might have cried a little. Can you blame me? But while Emma was at my house trying to make things right, Dad was having a very different conversation with Aunt Linda. And whatever she said to him must have struck a nerve, because on Saturday morning, a letter arrived. Dad's handwriting was unmistakable on the envelope. I almost threw it away. Jason noticed me holding it at the kitchen table. Is that from Grandpa?
Yeah,
I said. Are you going to read it? Good question. Would you have? I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check for $50,000. Did you expect that? I certainly didn't. The letter read. Rachel, I'm sorry for what I said. This is for Jason's college fund. But I need you to do something first. Come to Sunday dinner. Bring Jason. Don't tell Emma or Linda you're coming. Just you and the boy. We need to talk as a family. A bribe. He was trying to buy forgiveness. Jason leaned over my shoulder and read it. That's a lot of money, Mom. It is, I said quietly. What do you think we should do? He didn't answer right away. He sat there thinking for a long moment. And then he said something that completely shocked me. I think we should go, Jason said, but I want to bring the check with us. Why? I asked. You'll see. Do you think an 11-year-old should make a decision like that? Maybe not. But I let him. Sunday arrived. I texted Emma and told her we couldn't make our usual plans. I didn't explain why. Jason put on the same button-up shirt he had worn to the birthday party. He folded the check carefully and slipped it into his pocket. When we walked into Dad's house, he looked genuinely surprised. You came. Jason wanted to, I said. Dad looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time in years. I'm glad you're here, son. I'm not your son, Jason replied quietly. You made that clear. My father actually flinched. We sat down in the living room. Karen, my stepmother, brought in a tray of lemonade and quickly excused herself upstairs. Smart woman. I want to apologize, Dad began. Why? Jason interrupted. Why now? That was when things shifted. Dad's hands were shaking. Aunt Linda told me something, he said. About my father. Your great-grandfather. He looked at me. After your mother died, my father told me I should put you and Emma in a home. He said a widower couldn't raise daughters properly. That you needed a real mother. My jaw dropped. I told him to go to hell, Dad continued. I raised you girls by myself for 3 years before I met Karen. And I swore I would never be like him. Never treat family as less than because of circumstances. He wiped his eyes. Then Linda asked me what my father would have thought about that toast I made. And I realized something. I became him. I became exactly what I hated. Jason slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the check. Without breaking eye contact, he tore it in half. Dad's face went pale. I don't want your money, Jason said, his voice trembling but steady. I want my grandpa. The real one. Not someone who pays me to pretend he didn't hurt me. I have never been prouder of my son. My father broke down completely. I'm so sorry. God, Jason, I'm so sorry. And then something happened I didn't expect. Jason stepped forward and hugged him. This small, brave child wrapped his arms around his sobbing grandfather. But you have to mean it, Jason said. You can't just say sorry and then forget about me again. I won't, Dad promised. I swear I won't. I sat there crying, watching my son show more courage and grace than I ever had. But here's the truth, I wasn't sure I believed my father yet. Words are easy. Jason's forgiveness was his to give. Mine would take more than tears. Dad looked at me. Rachel, I know you're not ready to forgive me. I don't blame you. But I need to do something. Something public. Will you let me? What do you mean? Come to dinner next Sunday. The whole family. I need to make this right in front of everyone. Should I have trusted him? Should I have given him that chance? I looked at Jason. Jason looked at me and nodded. Okay, I said to my father, my voice steady. But if you hurt him again, I won't stay quiet. I swear on Mom's grave. I won't, he said softly. I swear. That week felt strange. Dad called Jason every single night. Sometimes they talked about school. Sometimes about soccer. Sometimes about nothing important at all. But he called. He showed up. On Wednesday, Emma called me. Dad invited us to dinner on Sunday, she said. He told us you'd be there. What's going on? I honestly don't know, I admitted. But I think he's trying to fix something. Is this about the check? She asked carefully. Aunt Linda hinted at something. Jason tore it up. Emma went quiet for a moment. Then she exhaled. That kid is incredible.
Yeah,
I said. He really is. Sunday dinner came. The entire family showed up, Emma and her crew, Aunt Linda, Uncle Mike, even cousins who had driven in from out of state. Dad had gone all out with the food, like he was hosting a holiday feast instead of a regular dinner. After everyone finished eating, Dad stood up. He looked nervous. His hands were shaking again. I need to say something, he began. 2 weeks ago, I made a toast that hurt people I love. Specifically, I hurt my grandson Jason and my daughter Rachel. The room went completely silent. I told Rachel her son wasn't a real grandchild, he continued, his voice heavy. I said it in front of everyone. In front of Jason. Emma's oldest daughter, Lily, gasped. Grandpa, you didn't. I did, he admitted. And I was wrong. Completely, terribly wrong. He walked over to our end of the table and did something none of us expected. He got down on one knee in front of Jason. A 70-year-old man kneeling before his grandson. Jason, he said, looking him in the eyes, you are my grandson. You're brave, you're kind, and you're a better person than I deserve. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. The truth is, I'm the one who wasn't enough. Jason's eyes filled with tears. Grandpa. Let me finish, Dad said gently. I'm setting up a college fund for you equal to what your cousins have. I'm changing my will. You'll inherit the same as everyone else. There were soft murmurs around the table. But more than that, Dad reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. This was my father's watch. I always planned to give it to, he paused, ashamed. Well, I had foolish ideas about who deserved it. But you deserve it. If you'll accept it. Do you think Jason took it? He did. With trembling hands, he opened the box and stared at the vintage watch inside. I'll earn it, Jason whispered. I promise I'll make you proud. You already have, Dad replied. Aunt Linda was openly crying. Emma wiped tears from her face. Even Tyler looked misty-eyed. Then Emma's middle child, Ben, broke the silence. Mom, why did Grandpa think Jason wasn't real? Tyler looked like he wanted to redirect the conversation, but Emma didn't. She answered honestly. Because Jason's dad died, Emma explained gently, and Grandpa had old-fashioned ideas about what a family is supposed to look like. That's stupid, Ben said immediately. Jason's family is just smaller. That doesn't make it fake. Out of the mouths of children. Dad stood up again, wiping his eyes. Ben's right. It was stupid. And cruel. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. I finally spoke. Dad, I appreciate this. I really do. But Jason already forgave you. I'm the one who's still angry. The air tightened around the table. I know, Dad said quietly. What can I do? Admit why you really treated us differently, I replied. It wasn't just about traditional families. What was it really about? Dad stared at the floor. Emma leaned forward. Even Aunt Linda looked surprised. You reminded me of my failures, he finally said. No one moved. When your husband died, you kept going. You kept working. You kept being an incredible mother. You showed a kind of strength I didn't have when your mom died. I fell apart. Linda practically raised you and Emma for a year. But you didn't fall apart. You survived. You even thrived. And I resented you for it. I wasn't expecting that kind of honesty. Were you? So you punished Jason because I was strong? I asked quietly. Yes, he said, his voice breaking. And I'm ashamed of that. Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. Karen went to answer it. 30 seconds later, she returned looking confused. Rachel, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is David Chin. My heart stopped. Jason's eyes widened. David Chin. My husband's best friend. The man who had vanished from our lives 9 years ago because being around us reminded him too much of what he had lost. What is he doing here? I asked. I called him, Dad admitted. I tracked him down. I thought Jason deserved to know his father's best friend. I thought maybe I could help fix some of what I broke. Was this my father trying to make things right, or overstepping in the biggest way possible? David walked in, older and grayer, but still unmistakably the man who had stood beside my husband at our wedding and held Jason as a newborn. Rachel, he said softly. I'm so sorry. For disappearing. For not being there. Jason stood slowly. You knew my dad? I was his best man, David said. And I loved him like a brother. What do you think Jason did? Run into his arms? Stay distant? He walked up calmly and said, Tell me about him. The real stuff. Not just the stories Mom tells. David laughed through tears. He was terrible at karaoke. Absolutely terrible. but he'd grab the mic anyway. He cried at dog food commercials. And before you were born, he talked about you every single day. Jason laughed. Actually laughed. Mom never told me about the karaoke. Because it was traumatic, I said, smiling despite myself. Across the room, Dad watched the reunion he had set in motion. I can't bring back what was lost, he said quietly. But maybe I can help build something new. For the first time in 9 years, I felt like my family was whole again. Still cracked in places, still healing, but whole. Emma wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "I'm proud of you for standing up for him. For standing up for all of it." Aunt Linda squeezed my hand and said softly, "Your mother would be proud of you too." As beautiful as the moment felt, something was still unsettled. There was one more conversation Jason and I needed to have with Dad. One final truth that had to come out, something that would either fully heal us or reopen every wound. It had to do with something he'd said earlier at dinner. A small detail about his will that didn't sit right with me. Should I have just accepted the happy ending? Or was I right to push for the whole truth? After dinner, I asked Dad if we could talk privately. Emma followed us into his study. I closed the door behind us. "What did you mean about the will?" I asked. "You said Jason would inherit the same as everyone else, not equally. What's the difference?" Dad walked to his desk and opened a drawer with trembling hands. He pulled out a small velvet box. "When your mother died, she left specific instructions," he began. "Certain things for each of you when you became mothers." He looked at Emma. "I gave you your grandmother's pearls when Lily was born. They're worth about 40,000. Emma nodded slowly. "And for Rachel," his voice cracked. "She left her original engagement ring. She wanted you to give it to Jason someday. It's worth about 50,000. My heart stopped. "I never gave it to you," he continued. "After your husband died, I told myself you might sell it to pay bills. I told myself you weren't stable enough. But the truth is, I used that as an excuse. If I convinced myself you weren't a real family, I didn't have to face the fact that I was keeping something that wasn't mine. You kept Mom's ring from me for 9 years?" I whispered. He opened the box. Inside was a stunning Art Deco ring, diamonds and sapphires set in intricate vintage detail. It was breathtaking. She wrote in her letter, Dad said softly, "Rachel has a strength that will carry her through anything. When she becomes a mother, she'll need to know I believed in her." Tears spilled down my face. My mother had believed in me before Jason was even born. And Dad had hidden that from me. Emma grabbed my hand. "Dad, that's unforgivable." "I know," he said quietly. "But I'm trying to make it right. Jason's college fund will match his cousin's, retroactive to the day he was born. Everything equal. The way it should have been. Should I have forgiven him?" I looked down at the ring, my mother's faith locked away for nearly a decade because of my father's fear. "I forgive you," I said finally. "Not because you deserve it. But because Jason deserves a grandfather who's trying. And because Mom would have wanted this." Then I met his eyes. "But you show up now. Every week. Every game. Every phone call. You treat Jason exactly like Emma's kids. No exceptions." "I will," Dad promised. "I swear." Emma stepped forward. "And we're all going to therapy. Family therapy." And for the first time, that didn't feel like a threat. It felt like hope. Dad actually smiled. "Your mother would have insisted on that," he said. When we returned to the living room, Jason was sitting with David, flipping through old photos. He looked up as we walked in. "Grandpa has something special to show you," I told him. "It's from your grandmother. She wanted you to have it when you're older." I opened the velvet box and showed him the ring. His eyes widened. "That's for me?" "When you're ready," I said softly. "To give to someone special someday, or to keep as a reminder of where you come from." She believed in us before you were even born. Jason looked at Dad. She believed in you too. More than I deserved, Dad replied quietly. Like you do. Jason walked over and hugged him again. I forgive you, Grandpa. But you can't forget about me again. Never, Dad whispered. Never again. The rest of the evening felt easy in a way I hadn't experienced in years. David shared hilarious stories about my husband, stories that made us laugh until we cried. The kids played cards at the dining table. Dad sat beside Jason and actually watched his soccer highlight videos, asking thoughtful questions like he truly cared. As we were leaving, Emma hugged me tightly. You changed everything tonight. Jason did, I said. He's braver than both of us. On the drive home, Jason stared out the window for a while before asking quietly, do you think Dad would be proud of me? I had to pull the car over because I was crying too hard to see the road. Oh, baby, I said, reaching for his hand. He would be so proud. You forgave someone who hurt you. You showed everyone what real family looks like. It's messy, Jason said thoughtfully.
Yeah,
I agreed. But it's ours. 6 months later, Dad hasn't missed a single soccer game. He calls Jason 3 times a week. We're all in family therapy, working through years of hurt. It's not perfect, but it's honest. Emma and I are closer than we've ever been. David comes to dinner twice a month. The cousins have constant sleepovers. And the ring sits safely in a deposit box, waiting for Jason one day, a reminder that strength runs in our family, that love can survive mistakes, and that real families aren't flawless. They just keep showing up. Was I right to forgive Dad? I think so. Because Jason deserved his grandfather. And my mother believed in second chances. That was the night I stopped staying silent. The night my son taught all of us what courage really looks like. The night our family, imperfect and patched together, finally became whole again.